Everybody say freedom. Everybody say freedom. Everybody say freedom. 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 Sing it over. Freedom. Say it loud now.
I tell stories and I teach at a community college. I love both jobs. There are moments when somebody's eyes will suddenly open wide and there's a light that comes on to them like they've just seen a new world, new possibilities. I never know when this magic is going to happen. I don't know what causes it. The last time it was a word. It was a word an ugly word, a word I'm pretty sure you'd never use, barring an attack of Tourette's syndrome. I teach writing to blue-collar, young, mostly white. And I wanted to challenge them with a piece of writing that was so powerful that it could change history, to show them that writing could do that. So what's better than Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail? King's words, they were like honey in my mouth. It is easy to say wait, but when you find your mouth stammering, your tongue twisting, while you try to explain to your 6-year-old daughter why she's not allowed to play in a public park, and when you see little clouds of insecurity forming on her 6-year-old mental sky, and your first name has become boy, and your wife's name is girl, and your last name is nigger, then you'll understand why we find it difficult to wait. The class was dead silent. Suddenly a hand went up. Professor Reiser, Professor Reiser. I like being called Professor. Yes, Cindy. Professor Reiser, you use the N-word. Now, I'm a teacher. I'm used to making or trying to make anything into lemonade. But this was not the response I was expecting. Did anybody have an idea why Dr. King used that word? No answer. Suddenly, Daisy stood up. Professor Reiser, Dr. King would never have used that word. She had a marine tattoo right on her bicep. Sir, she said. The correct word, sir, is African American, sir. And she sat down. I looked around. Charles, who was sitting right in the front row, he's a construction worker and he's a nursing student. He stood up and he said, well, maybe Dr. King was trying to get people's attention. I said, oh, that's interesting. Does anybody have any idea whose attention he was trying to get? Who did he try to reach? Look, the class had no idea what I was talking about. Well, I says, was he trying to reach preachers? Teachers? Students? Suddenly, the whole class started laughing. What is so funny? Cindy said, Professor Reiser, students don't care. Why would he want to reach them? We don't even vote. This got to me. I said, did you ever hear of Freedom Summer? Blank looks, a little bit of eye rolling, like, oh, God. I said, 1964, 1,000 students went down south to help register people to vote. They took care of people's children. They started schools. They drove people to the courthouse so that they could register. And every night, the Ku Klux Klan rode out, beating, killing them. But the students stayed on. And the hope that they started, you can still hear in songs that they sing today, that people still sing today. Like, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. The students started tapping their feet. This, you can too. It said, the light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Sing along, nice little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Well, as soon as it was over, the class sat there absolutely quiet. Cindy shook her head and said, wow, I didn't even know that. Daisy stood up and said, sir, they were heroes, sir. They deserve medals. And she sat down. A guy in the back called himself Bug, stood up and went, dum 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 dum. Rena, the only black student in the class, yelled, they don't have respect today. And Charles moaned. He said, we are such weenies. They looked so depressed. I somehow they had managed to, all the craziness and wonder and stupidity of my generation had like congealed into their mind, into this mishmash of Star Wars and the Brady Bunch. How could they compete with us? Look, I said to them, look, I will tell you what I remember, what I learned. And you tell me if our generation was that much different than yours. They sat down. They smiled. They smelled a story coming. And they closed their books. I started in 1988. I didn't know that much about the civil rights movement except for what I had seen on television. But I was at this gathering of folk singers, and as I was passing through, I heard from behind this door, I heard this clapping and this shouting and this singing. I opened the door. It said freedom songs on it, and wham! I was sucked into this tornado of shouting and singing and cheering and laughing and carrying on. I met this guy, Matt, a little fire plug of a guy, and this woman with electric green eyes, Diane, and this giant of a man with a preacher's collar. His name was Willie. And they were laughing and talking about the beatings that they had taken, and the showing each other their scars and talking about their broken bones. And they were laughing about this. I said, what are you laughing about? Diane looked at me like I was simple-minded. We're laughing because we're alive. Yeah. They were exactly my age, but right next to them, I felt like I was a 6-year-old. I had never heard the stories that they were telling. I don't think other people had heard those. The stories were much too important to just die out. That's when I decided to write the book. A year later, I was stuck in a box. Literally. the slowest elevator in New York City. It was pulling me up to the top of this dark building. Finally, clunk, it stopped. I unhooked the chain that's supposed to keep you from falling down the elevator shaft. I looked out into the dark. I yelled out, "Vic!" Down the hallway, I saw a door open, skinny guy step out. "Bob?" I stepped forward. "Yeah." He grabbed my hand and he yanked me into his loft. Now, when I say loft, I am not talking Architectural Digest. More like a Fellini movie. There was a mattress on the floor. There was a broken dresser, 3 legs on it leaning against the wall. There were books. There was clothing, papers everywhere. Vic, he knocked some papers off a chair, said, "Sit down, Bob. Do your thing." So I took out my recorder, my notes, and I sat down. So I asked him the first question. "So, Vic, what got you into the civil rights movement?" Looks at me. Says, "Bob, why are you here? You know the civil rights movement's been over for 20 years? I told him about the workshop with the freedom songs and meeting Matt and Diane and the stories and wanting to get them down. Vic looks at me, sideways, like a bird. Bob, you mean you're looking for heroes?" Well, I didn't know what to say. And then I remembered something I had completely forgotten. At the end of that singing session, everyone went quiet. They stepped to the middle of the room, formed a circle, crossed their arms, and began to sing. "We shall overcome. We shall overcome." Now, I'd heard that song. I'd sung that song. I knew that song, but I had never sung it holding hands with people who had depended on that song to stay alive. And while I was singing, I felt a shiver going through my hands, my knees, my whole body was trembling. The voices went on, "We shall overcome someday." And I couldn't go on. My voice had turned to a sob. Vicky looks at me. "Huh. So that's what you're looking for?" I nodded. I couldn't even talk. "That's cool. But I got to warn you, Bob, I got 130 cousins. And we have a reunion every year. We laugh, we sing, we carry on. And I've got bankers in the family and farmers and everybody. But we got no heroes. I don't think I've ever met a hero." Oh, wait, he suddenly stops. He says, "I lie. I met 2 heroes. Yep. A couple of hunkies. I'm sorry, Bob. I mean white people. I'm not messing with you, Bob. You asked me why I joined the movement. I joined to find chicks." He starts to laugh. He chokes. He hiccups. Has himself a glass of water. Yeah, I'm serious, Bob. It was those 2 guys taught me that there was more than that. Yeah, I'll tell you how it happened. We were on the Freedom Bus. We'd just been pulled off it when I was thrown into this horrible place for Freedom Riders. It was disgusting. It was stunk. It was dark. I didn't know where I was. All I knew is it was the middle of the night sometime. I was freezing to death. And I'm sitting on my cot in the dark. And I hear this voice coming out of the darkness. I'm on my way to Freedom Land. You know, I know that voice. That's Hollis. So I join in. I'm on my way to Freedom Land. And more and more voices are starting to join in. I'm on my way to Freedom Land. Everybody is singing. I'm on my way. Great God, I'm on my way. We're all here together. And suddenly the lights go on. And the guards are standing outside, coming in. All right, they're screaming, get down, get off your cots and get on the floor. Get there now. We jumped right down onto the floor. Now, take off your clothes. I looked down. We're wearing nothing but our underwear. Get off your clothes. Quick, we pull off our clothes. We're sitting here on the cold concrete, freezing, and all together. All right, now, stand up. We stood up. Sit down. We sat down. Suddenly notice, 2 guys are not moving. These are the white guys I was telling you about. One old guy. Big beard like on a box of Smith Brothers cough drops. The other one's this little student guy, skinny. He's got these thick glasses, make his eyes look like little peas. They do not move a muscle. The guards start wailing on them. Get down! Get down! But these 2 white guys, they do not move a muscle. I'm staring at them. And then finally, the guards pick up their mattresses and dump them onto the floor. And they're just sitting on the floor. Now, take off your clothes. They do not move. I'm staring. I cannot believe. And then I remember something Dr. King had told us. You can't ride a horse if his back's not bent. These guys were tough. We all stood up, all the rest of us. We looked down and we started singing. I love everybody. I love everybody. Just to distract the guards. They hate this song. They know we're being ironic. I love everybody in my heart. Now the guards carrying on the old guy with the beard. He is singing the loudest. One guard takes a cattle prod, jabs him with it, and the guy starts twitching and shaking all over the place. But he keeps on singing. I love everybody. I love the guards at Parchment. The guards at this point are so disgusted, they spit, walk out, lock the door. Lights stayed on, Bob. Those 2 guys, they taught me what I know. Do you know what Gandhi said? He said, if we hate like the others hate, the fighting will go on forever. What you got to do is say, I will not hate you, but I will not obey you either. Then nobody owns you. That's what those guys taught me. They're my heroes. And I don't even know their names. But now, the room had gotten so dark in the fading light, I could hardly see Vic's face. But I asked him one last question. What do you do with the anger? I didn't hear anything. I thought maybe he hadn't heard me. And then I heard him whisper, I'm still working on that. That's all he said. He never said anything else. Looked up. The students were quiet. Few were snoring. Most of them were listening. So I went on. I told them about how that summer I went down south to see what the South was like, to walk the streets, to meet the people. 1989 it was. And how it was nothing like the South that I'd been hearing about. Even Winona, Mississippi, that's the home of the Ku Klux Klan, was this place with little bungalows and green grass. Very pretty. No blood in the street, no burning crosses. Then, driving out of town on Route 8, I stopped for a cold 7-Up. And coming out of the convenience store, gas station convenience store, I see an old man all stooped over, trying to come in. I opened up the door for him. Oh, come on, give him a big, big smile. He's, no, sir, no. Big, come on, all right. And so he scuttled past me, his head down, going, thank you, sir, thank you, sir, thank you, sir. I walked out of there, and there was like this wave of sickness inside my stomach. It was my first taste of that kind of power, the power to make old men tremble. It tasted rotten. By now, every student was listening. He probably noticed. There was a lot of singing in the civil rights movement. Well, Matt explained it to me. He said, Bob, it's a Southern thing. You see, singing, it changes you. When you're frightened, it gives you courage. When you're feeling weak, it gives you strength. The songs are why we were able to keep on going. It's true. I'll show you how it works. In 1962, I think it was, in Birmingham, Alabama, a black high school teacher went to register to vote. The sheriff, to make an example of her, grabbed her out of the line, kicked her down the street right in front of everyone. The next day, 200 teachers and students marched out of their classrooms down to the courthouse to protest. The police were ordered to open up on them with fire hoses. And the stream from those hoses threw them down, knocked them against the buildings, shattered their bones, fractured their skulls. And that evening, a reporter was interviewing a girl in the high school who had been injured. And he said to her, why didn't you just stay in school where you'd be safe? And she said to him, I got to do what the spirits say. And the next day, 500 teachers and students marched out of their classrooms straight down to the courthouse, and they were singing a new song, one they had just created that morning. You gotta do what the Spirit say do. You gotta do what the Spirit say do. You can join me. What the Spirit say do. You do what you gotta do. You gotta do what the Spirit say do. I tried staying in touch with Vic, but every time I would track down an address, he had moved on. And then, one evening, the phone rang. Hey, Bob. Hey, Matt. What's up? He says, Bob, is it too late to call? I said, no. What's happening? Vic passed. And I thought he meant pass through town. No, Bob. He's gone. He's died. I couldn't speak. Nothing came out. Finally, I said, well, when's the service? Well, Saturday, Bob. But you don't have to come. It's in Mississippi. You know, down there, the Klan still thinks it is 1960. There could be a very ugly scene. And then Matt starts laughing. You can imagine that, Vic. He's 6 foot under, but he's still marching. So, I got off the phone. My wife looked up at me. Who was that? I said, Vic, the guy from the book, he died. Oh, she said. I from the sound of your voice, I thought it was family. It was. Saturday morning, 10 a.m., 93 degrees, 100% humidity. That is comfortable by Mississippi standards. All around me that were 130 Morgan cousins. There were black and white and Latino, and there was farmers in their starched shirts and ladies with their sunbonnets. Suddenly there was this commotion. People were looking around, whispering. I turned, and up on the hill stood 6 apparitions from Birth of a Nation. Their white sheets flapped in the hot wind. There were no features on them except for 2 holes where their eyes should be. The only thing human looking was the red Mississippi mud that was stuck to their shoes. The Klan was coming closer, and they were pulling weapons out from under their sheets. That's when Matt yelled out at the top of his lungs, "Freedom!" Everything stopped. Then Milton and Diane sang out, "Everybody, say freedom!" And one by one, voices started joining. Freedom, freedom, freedom. And it turned into a song. And for one incredible moment, 130 Morgan cousins and hippies and professors and school teachers were singing together in the graveyard. Freedom, 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 freedom. And we surrounded Vic's grave, and we turned outward to face the other Klan. Then we crossed our arms and began to sing We shall overcome. We shall overcome. And I started to feel that shiver, tingle going through me, and that electricity right there. And just like before, we shall overcome today. And like that time, 10 years earlier, a sob broke out from my mouth. I looked up. The 6 figures had gone. They had vanished. After the service, we were standing around. Everybody was hugging, saying goodbye, promising to stay in touch. But I noticed right by the graveyard, right by the gravestone, was a middle-aged man kneeling, putting down some kind of offering. And I saw the red Mississippi mud on his shoes. I looked closer. His offering was a sheet with 2 holes in it, and it had been cut to shreds and tied into a knot. I looked at the man, caught my eye. He stood up. He shrugged. I'm sorry. And he walked away. So I looked up at the class. I finished the story and looked at them. I thought he had finished. Miraculously, they were all there. They were waiting for it to end. So, thanks to Vic, I said, I found what I was looking for. It wasn't heroes. You know who makes things change? It's not heroes. They're wonderful teachers and role models, but they don't change the world. Nothing changes. And I didn't know how to say it so that they would believe me. Do you remember that word that Dr. King used in his letter? The class nodded, yeah. Has anyone figured out who he was trying to wake up with that word? Looked around. Charles suddenly looked up, and his eyes went wide, and his mouth started to open. I put my finger to my lips so he wouldn't say anything. I looked around the room at the other students, and one by one, their eyes opened and their faces shone like stars. They knew exactly who Dr. King was speaking to. Don't you? So, now that we know who Dr. King was addressing and who he was telling us could change the world, what will we do now? You gotta do what the spirits say do. You gotta do what the spirits say do. When the Spirit say do, you do what you gotta do. You gotta do what the Spirit say do. Thank you.
In the classroom, freedom. In your neighborhood, freedom. On the school bus, freedom, freedom, freedom.
All the children want freedom. All the people want freedom. We all want freedom, freedom, freedom.
Mississippi, freedom.